Good evening and welcome. Today is Wednesday, November 18th, 2018, and this is the City of Anderson Board of Architects. First item on the agenda, anything?
Nothing else to add tonight.
Very good. We got a full public hearing. Let's begin with BAR 1831. Go.
This application came before the board in June for a renovation of the building for Grace Church. The applicant has made two changes that now need to be approved by the board. They both deal with the addition that was proposed for the back of the building. So it's a change to the addition and a change to signage on the building that was previously approved. So the applicant had gotten approval for the addition with the metal tiles, as you recall. What they were seeking to do now is to change the addition and the signage to what you see here. So sort of the same basic shape, the same tile materials on the outside of the building. It will just be open now and it will not be enclosed. The sign moves from the side of the building to a larger sign here on this portion of the building.
Okay.
The sign would still meet the standard sign guidelines. And so instead of the storefront glass, it would be open now. Again, same exterior finished materials that metal tile that was discussed in previous meetings. So, again, when reviewing this request, the board should focus on the standards set forth in Chapter 5 of the Downtown Design Guidelines, which are design guidelines for individual building elements. Chapter 6, design guidelines for alterations and additions, and Chapter 8, design guidelines for signs. Following policies apply. First policy states that historic windows and doors significantly affect the character of a structure and should be preserved. The next policy states that you should minimize the visual impacts of an addition to a commercial building. Design of signs to be in balance with the overall character of the property. Appropriate signs include freestanding flush-mounted window projecting in the wall sign that is being considered. And finally, the sign should be in character with those seen historically. The board must decide the proposed improvements meet the above criteria, and once again, sign permits will be required before any of the signage is installed on the building. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for staff, and the applicant is represented here tonight as well.
Now, the report indicated that there were some other changes, or is that all we're dealing with tonight?
This here, the window here is the other one.
Okay.
So the window here, no longer enclosing
right.
The addition and the sign. I believe are all the changes from the previous application.
Right. Okay, so we're adding that window. Now, it was also mentioning in the report about removing the ACT lettering.
That's from the original.
Okay.
That's from the original staff report. So this staff report is just tacked onto that, so you can see what was approved previously back in June.
So the only change is this: one additional window and opening up the back.
And the sign change.
And the sign change, of course.
Right.
All right.
What kind of sign is it?
The graphic, like a vinyl graphic on the sign for the sign here, or
metal. Yeah, it proposes metal attached to the lighting.
Okay.
Would it be backlit or preliminary?
No, it could just be either just a light from underneath the canopy that we have, or maybe a spotlight off the ceiling.
Just simply opening up, keeping the same clean lines, same materials, and an additional window. Windows are good. Any concerns? Is there a motion from Jill? Second from Mary Lou. Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Move on now to BAR 1848.
the applicant is seeking approval for a new campus signage plan at 307 South Manning Street in the Downtown Historic District. Property is home of First Baptist Church. They have some signage on the site now. They are upgrading their signage with a new signage plan. They are adding additional signage on the property. And you have this in your staff report. which indicates by number which sign goes with which, and that's how it's laid out in the staff report. So you have, we would like to add a number of new freestanding wall and directional signage on the campus. The sign plan as submitted does meet our city sign requirements. There are a number of freestanding signs, but the approval of those is based on the road frontage. Obviously, they have extensive road frontage around the campus, so it does meet those requirements. Signs 1 and 2 are new signs at the corner of Fant Street. You can see them here again. One here at the corner of Fant Market, and then Fant and Benson Street here. That's sort of their main signage on brick columns. It'll be an aluminum sign face with a vinyl graphic. It'll have ground illumination. It will not be internally illuminated. And they had decided to go with the horizontal. So this one, there wasn't either or, but they have decided now to go with this option here. So, so those are the first two signs. Sign 3 and sign 4, freestanding signs near the parking lot and sort of the entrance to the Child Development Center. They have decided to go with the black legs for the sign. You see the sign here. And then sign 4 is actually on the brick wall behind here. Again, all metal faces with vinyl graphics on them.
Now, the black legs that you mentioned, is there going to be black trim on all the signs?
The black trim around.
It's have black trim. The sign actually has it's like a blue to match the logo. It's a grayish blue.
On the cabinet itself? Okay.
Okay, so it's going to be the blue.
The legs will be black, and then the edge of the cabinet that you'll see will be a grayish blue.
Like the one on the
Like
left-hand side,
this one or that one.
on that one.
But, so, sort of like this grayish blue here, but with black legs.
Jeff, Kevin has a picture if you want to show on the left there.
Yeah.
It's the bluer trim with the black legs.
And you're going to be using the same color combinations on all the signs. Very good. That's what I wanted to do. Thank you.
Sign 5, you've got some signage on the wall here near the entrance to the Child Development Center. Just directing traffic in there. 6 and 7, again, small signage on the building, small wall signs on the building. Fellowship Hall, just another directional, please use the other entrance. Number 8, again, this will have black legs as well. Another small directional sign, directing to different places on the property. 10 and 11, small signs on the gymnasium building. 12, 13, and 14 really are kind of internal signs that relate to the park on the property. So a small playground entrance sign, another playground entrance sign on the other side, and then access ramp sign, which would not normally need to be approved as a sort of a handicap accessibility sign. Near the pavilion that they've erected, sign naming it the Jim and Pam Thomason Pavilion. Again, near the playground, a directional sign, or this will actually have some history of the park on there, so it's an informational sign. Right now, there is no freestanding sign for the church office. There's just a small sign here. So this would add a freestanding sign here for the church office and replace the existing small sign on the entrance to the church office there.
And do you need a sign both on the yard as well as?
We'll just use the freestanding sign.
Thank you. Yeah.
And then over at the Wilmary, a change in the freestanding sign. Have you decided on the full sign or the monument sign?
The sign at the Wilmary will actually be the same design as the black leg signs that you see elsewhere.
Very good.
Okay.
Yes. Kevin has a picture if you want to see it.
This is a change. So. And then across from sort of the main entrance to the church, another directional sign there that's replacing an existing sign. And then on their main identification sign, again, just a new face with the new logo on there. And they've also added in a visitor parking sign as well. Once again, when reviewing this application, the board should focus on the standards set forth in Chapter 8 of the Downtown Design Guidelines. I won't go through all those again, we just went through those. Once again, the sign plan does meet the standard sign ordinance in terms of number of signs and square footage of signs. Again, the board must decide the proposed changes meet the above criteria, and sign permits will be required prior to installation of the sign.
Very good.
Any questions that you have?
Thank you. I mean, we've had similar requests before us, you know, the uniformity.
Big property, and people need to know where to go. I go to a big church in Anderson too, and we have signs like that. And it's very helpful to new people that come on.
All right, is there,
The applicant is seeking approval for exterior alterations on the property at 402 South Main Street in the Downtown Historic District. The property will be the new home of Simply Country Chic. This is the green building, and so you have Bark, and then the green building, and the yellow building, and then the corner with Market Street. The applicant would like to add a new awning on the front of the building. Be a black canvas awning over the front. They're also going to touch up the paint on the building, but it'll be the same color as the building is currently painted, so that will not be a change, it will be an improvement that you will see. Again, at this point, it's just a black canvas awning with no signage. The applicant is aware that she'll need to come back at a later time for sign approval. Again, they're also repainting the building the same color, so this does not require board approval. We're reviewing this application. The board should focus on the standards set forth in Chapter 9, Design Guidelines for Awnings and Canopies. Following sections apply to this request. Policy states that an awning or canopy should be similar to those seen historically. It should be compatible in material and construction to the style of the building, and it should be mounted to accentuate character-defining features. The board must decide the proposed building meets the above criteria, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have for staff, and the applicant is here tonight as well.
canvas awning like we've seen and approved. Any concerns, comments? Is there a motion? A motion from John, second from Moyer. Anything further? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
We look forward to having you back to sign. Next, we have BAR 1850.
The applicant is seeking approval for new signs on the property at 129 East Whitner Street in the Downtown Historic District. The property is a new home of Groucho's Deli. The applicant would like to add window signs, 2 wall signs, and a hanging sign. So on the front of the building, you would have window signage, a wall sign that goes across the front, and a hanging sign, basically from that location right there. So in terms of the window signage, it's a vinyl graphic that has the logo. And then on the other window, we have some additional verbiage related to their business, credit cards, some other rules about, coming into the restaurant. So vinyl graphics on the window.
Those additional vinyl graphics would all be on one window?
The graphics would be over 2 windows.
Well, I mean, you're right, but the additional beyond the logo.
Looking to have, there's 3 large windows,
Uh-huh.
in addition to the door window. The informational stick vinyl would be on the door, and then 3 of the vinyls centered on.
3 of the logos.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Again, on the front of the building, you'd have Groucho's Deli, and that would either be painted or vinyl letters, similar to the co-work space where they did the vinyl lettering on the wall for their signage. And then lastly, you have a sign on the side entrance to the building, and you'd have be lit by 2 gooseneck lights. Consists of red acrylic letters mounted on a white acrylic backing, so it'd be a dimensional sign for the backing, and then the red letters mounted on top of that. 2 black gooseneck lights. The proposed signs, as requested, do meet the standard city sign ordinance requirements. Again, same sign guidelines we talked about before, all the different types of signs that they're requesting are allowed. And again, they would need permits prior to doing any installation of the sign. Once again, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for staff and the applicants here tonight as well.
And the material on the sign on the side here, that's material we've approved before?
It's like the HDU, the material, so it is a plastic material, but we have approved similar materials in the past. What we have seen sometimes is the HDU where it's rounded out, so it kind of looks like wood, like a wooden rounded sign. So I believe these would match what we had done in the past, yes.
You said a hanging sign as well? Jeff?
Yes, on the front of the building.
Like a projection sign?
It's a small round sign. Hang off that corner, black iron post and then a round sign, like you see there. I think it's 2 feet in diameter.
Question as to the size of the logo signs in these windows?
We had not actually finished that. We don't want to fill up the whole window, and sign guy and I were actually speaking about that. Maybe a third of the window width, so 2/3 of the window is still exposed on top end.
Okay,
Okay, good.
very good. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Is there a motion?
So moved.
A motion from John, second from Moyer. Anything further? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
And when's the opening date?
I get a bonus if I pick the correct date. We're hoping January.
Very good. So are we. Thank you, sir. Now I think we're down to BR 1851.
The applicant is seeking approval for exterior alterations on the property at 210 South Main Street in the downtown historic district. The property is currently vacant, at least the ground floor is vacant. This is something we've seen several years ago. We approved some changes to the front. We approved this is a brown color. It doesn't show very well on my screen here, but sort of a brownish beige color, and then a green building here. And then you have a metal awning that runs across the front here. What they're seeking to do is to replace that with a black canvas awning, reopen this window with a new window to match the others that were previously approved by the board, and then they would also like to repaint this building to match this. It's the same owner. This space on the first floor is all one large retail space. And so the owner of the building kind of considers it as one building instead of two, and they're seeking to have them match up and look like one space as of this point. So it would be the replacement of the awning, opening up this window here as well, and then the paint color change to match the building next door. I don't have a chip because to match the building next door. We're reviewing this application. The board should focus on the standards set forth in Chapter 5, Design Guidelines for Historic Resources, Chapter 9, Design Guidelines for Awnings and Canopies, and Chapter 10, Design Guidelines for Colors. We've spoken previously tonight about the windows and the awnings. The language for colors basically says to use colors to tie together the entire storefront. When choosing a color, consider the context or major colors on the surrounding buildings. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for staff, and the applicant is here tonight as well.
Hernandez, question for you, sir.
Circle back here tonight.
You know, clearly additional windows, reopening is great. The awning is pretty standard. Talk to us about wanting to paint the two buildings the same color. I understand what Jeff has said, but these were two distinct buildings, and architecturally, my thought is you may be taking away some of the architectural interest to it. So tell us what your thinking is.
Sure. We've had a couple of people look at the building, and I'm not the owner of it. I'm working for the owner in this particular case. people who have looked at it, when they walk through that alley that comes out basically right here, through the parking lot, you come out to the alley that looks at Sullivan's and looks at this. It looks absolutely like two distinctive buildings. And the tenants that we've had that have looked at it, which would be great tenants to have downtown, get the initial impression that it's not a big enough space because most of them park there before they see it, and they come over there. And so the owner and us, I would offer this. I don't really care what color it is that you like in the downtown. I just don't want it to be George St. Blue awning color. But other than that, I would say if you wanted it all green or you wanted it all something, but something to tie them together. They look too separated when they are one use. And what's even ironic about it, the actual split in the floor is not even anymore right where that divider is. It's actually shifted over. So, but we want to keep the architecture different, but somehow have some connectivity between the two so that as a prospective tenant, a large prospective retail tenant in this particular case, could believe that it's one use somehow and tie it together. And that's really the input that we've gotten. And it's been vacant for a long time. And the person who brought me in on this happened to see what we were doing at Belle Beauty and some of the other places that we've been touching. And their comment to me was, I just can't get anybody to see that it's a 7,000 square foot space. It looks like it's two small spaces, not a 7,000 square foot space. I personally don't like changing the architecture. The very first comment to me was, let's change it so it all looks like one. I do like having the two. My compromise to them was, let's go to y'all and try to find a single color purpose that would tie it together. So you asked my thinking. I know that's a long about way of explaining it, but I wanted to give you the background and then kind of where we are.
Let me ask this. Are you looking to repaint or touch up the paint on the larger building?
Yes.
Okay, so you're looking to paint all of it?
Yes, but but we were planning on, as was alluded to, we were planning on matching it.
Right.
But if you said to me, hey, we want it all a light green or a light something, that is fine, because we are planning on painting the whole thing. We're planning on repainting the original building to the color that's there. So that's why I offer to you that it can be any color that your heart desires, as long as it's not Pacific blue.
Okay, let me toss this out to the group and then you take it from there. He's looking to repaint the entire building. The trim color, all matching, that ties it together. If he chose two colors, a light and a dark, and offset some of the architectural details, different for each building, you figure out how to break it up. It would tie them together, but still maintain some of the uniqueness of the character and distinct, that they were originally distinctly two different buildings. But
May I offer one more thing to your comment? This band is actually the same color as the building. If I were to use your thought process, I would say that if that band were the same color white as these, that would help tie it more together. So that's another way to, I'm just trying to think outside the box and try to appease people looking at it. And again, I'm the guy who, wanted to keep everything original if I possibly could. Trust me, I'm there with you. I'm just trying to figure out a way to compromise this thing so that everybody's happy with the end result.
And certainly, and we want to promote downtown businesses and growth and development, but also at the same time, we're charged with maintaining architectural integrity and detail. I think basically, if you get a light and dark combination, keeping them a little distinct. Thoughts?
And I think that the awning that's on there now, the metal one, it disappears. Like looking at it with this picture, you don't even notice it. But what you're proposing to put up is going to pull those buildings together.
It will help. Agreed. That's one of the reasons why we chose that. But I do want to say that the awning that's up there, I'm not a licensed structural engineer, even though I have for a bit of background, I did bring in a licensed structural engineer, and he said, you need to get that thing down as fast as you can. So it's in very poor shape, so it has to come down either way.
Sure. And no problem with the awnings, I mean, of course.
No, that's what I was pointing out. I think the new
sure.
awning really does pull it together.
That space that's directly above the existing awning there is no great thing to look at. So if you had an awning in that spot, it would look more attractive.
Agreed. Glad that you see that.
Yeah, I do. And I actually like your idea of extending the trim work with the paint color.
I even wondered if the, you have a cornice on the building on the right, and if you just continued the line of the cornice across
So you're going
in
into.
the same color tone, it might unify the
across
whole
here.
thing. Yes.
Yeah.
That would make the cornice appear to be one thing, even though it's not. And my first thought with this is that it doesn't really disturb me overly to make it appear to be one, because it isn't really changing the building, it's just paint. And if somebody comes along later and wants two buildings, we haven't heard anything. It's
No.
just a question of paint. So I don't think it's a big deal to me anyway that you're trying to make it look like one, as long as it isn't a structural change.
Right.
Yeah,
Not sure.
I feel like, I mean, I like your idea, but I also understand yours, and I do think with the awning at the eye level focus, so to speak, and then having the cornice at the top, that gives you two definitive areas so that it does sort of pull it together.
It does help. I don't mind the shade variances. I think that one being specifically green and one being specifically beige creates an absolute dichotomy between the two. But,
Blending it, you know.
right. But I actually would be, personally, without talking yet, I personally would be in favor of a shading variation.
Sometimes lightning as you go upward is attractive in a tall building.
I agree.
I think if you look at it as it's part of a block that's got very different character appeals from building to building. I mean, we're going from modern to traditional, and still wanting to maintain. I mean, we don't want it to look more like a strip shopping center, in other words. But as a business owner, I can appreciate where your client's coming from. Can I see the proposed picture again with the awning? And that's a black awning?
Yes.
Okay. Any lettering proposed for that awning at this point or down the road?
Again, you'll, I walk out of Belle Beauty daily and see the one across the street, and I'm absolutely opposed to that because it feels like it's a billboard on an awning. So I'm trying to stay away from that, except for an address or something like that. That would be the only thing, at least today. We have talked to two different tenants who would take the entire space each.
Okay.
Neither of them are talking about lettering the awning.
I think if you just looked for a tonal difference that's in the same family between both buildings, a black awning down here is tying together the first story. And as Dan was suggesting, maybe taking the white paint across the cornice between the two.
I think it's a great idea.
I think you'd achieve the same thing from a feel.
Right.
So what you're saying is basically,
I'm
you got the
suggesting,
green here, so maybe do the next lighter shade of green here, is sort of what you're saying, or?
no, I think you've got red and then brown here. You probably need to stick with the earth tone.
So brown here and then maybe a darker brown here.
Right, white across the top.
Yeah, I'm hearing the darker, and then, but the white, I like the transitioning of the white, I think that works. I mean, everything you've said, I absolutely would support. I don't see an issue with any of that. And frankly, oftentimes, as you all know, I could have 5 architects look at the same drawing, and I'll come up with 7 or 8 different variations of it. So, I'm trying to, collaborate with you guys on some of this stuff, and this would be one of them. Actually, the next The next building's another one, and I have one coming next month, which is another one, so it's, anyway.
Any thoughts to just the storefront windows and the framing there, just maintaining that same white that's there right now?
Maintaining white colors, but we're talking about replacing the glass in the storefront. And currently, that white is nothing but like a pillar and then a black frame in it, and we would basically be maintaining that.
Okay, thank you.
And it looks like the windows on the green building are maroon or something.
It looks like it, but it actually isn't. It's white. It's white pillars with black glass inside.
The other building.
And I know we don't get into colors a whole lot, but I don't think it has to be,
They're the same.
yeah, I don't think it has to be beige or it has to be green. I just think that the tonal differences and our combination would be very handsome.
And I want to really put this window back in that's missing here, because I think
Oh, sure.
it doesn't look right.
No, it doesn't. But I mean, if you can use two tones of the same color
Yeah.
in combinations on both buildings.
Right.
But
Well, and I think I've told you guys before, I've served in the city of Tampa, and we had an architectural board as well. And oftentimes, when I served on the board and years afterwards, the chairman would, if you have colors like this and you can bring those swatches in, and you wouldn't have to go wait for another meeting, and the chairman could just approve those colors. That's something that, I have you guys think about, because over time, it's difficult, because a building I'm bringing you next month, you've seen already twice, but people keep changing it, and so but it's easy, your intent is still met, it's just anytime you make a change, I have to come back to you all. Okay. That's a whole nother topic for
the rules we live by.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
But I'm fine with the tonal differences. I'm fine with everything that you guys have said. And I agree with you that the black helps tie it together. I like the idea of white. I'll tie that in. And then we'll have the green building be a shade or a couple of shades darker than the original building. Repaint the original building.
but I mean, would it be possible to use the light and dark colors,
Yes.
both on each building?
Oh,
On each building,
yeah.
setting them all separately. I mean,
The reversing of them.
reversing of them, I mean, using the same two colors,
Right.
but with the added details of these buildings, breaking it out all the more would enhance each building individually, and together in combination,
Pull it together.
the reversing out. And I've got for Moyer's benefit, I
Well,
put light and dark on various sections of the building that happy to share with you.
And the reality of it is that, as long as we can get some conceptual approval, so we can get going on demolition and a bunch of other things, I can actually come back to you are you guys meeting in December?
Yes.
Yes,
I can come back to you in December with the exact colors,
okay.
the exact
That'd be great.
tonal.
But I think we can go ahead and approve for you tonight the awning and the window, and we'll talk a little more afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I was gonna say is that you keep talking about white. If you're gonna go with those sort of earth tones, I would think off-white rather than.
Yeah, it is
white.
I would never do a stark white.
White would be terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, so, for tonight, the awning and the opening up of the window. I have a motion from Jill, second from Mary Lou, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Look forward to talking with you a little further tonight. All right, now we're down to 1852, is that correct? Yes.
The applicant is seeking approval for exterior alterations on the property at 134 North Main Street in the downtown historic district. The property here is currently vacant. They're looking at a couple of things on this here. Painting the top of the building white. There's a change proposed for this large awning here would be removed and already done on the sides, 2 gooseneck lights, and changing the numbering on the building to make it smaller. There's also a possibility that they may trim that out in black around the lettering, and so there would like an either or approval for that. I believe there are any changes for the first floor, so it would be painting the top with the brick, the numbering change, and then the change with the awning and the addition of the 2 lights. Building has been painted previously. There's still sort of gray paint flecked on it. And so they are seeking to repaint a building that has previously been painted. When reviewing this application, the board should focus on the standards set forth in Chapter 4, Design Guidelines for Historic Building Materials, Chapter 7, Guidelines for Site Design, Chapter 9, Design Guidelines for Awnings and Canopies, and Chapter 10, Design Guidelines for Colors. First policy states that masonry construction should be preserved in its original condition. Masonry that was not painted historically shall not be painted. In terms of the lighting, the site lighting should be used to enhance the pedestrian experience at night by providing a well-lit environment. It talks about the different uses for site lighting. Next policy talks about awnings and canopies should be similar to those seen historically. And again, with the colors, use colors to tie together the entire storefront. And when choosing a color, consider the context or major colors on the surrounding building. Once again, the board must decide the proposed building changes meet the above criteria.
Question, the area just below the balcony where 134 is written, what color is that now? Is that going to be painted white as well?
The light gray color.
That's what I thought.
Here.
Is that going to be painted the white, or is that going to remain gray?
Well, so let me go back to your question on the previous project, which is what is the intent of, I don't know how well you all know the history of this building, but the cocktail lounge that sits upstairs is successful and is doing well. Every occupant on the first floor has not lived a long life cycle, and so there has been a discussion with the owners that we would like to create a dramatic enough change so that there's a exterior walk-by street view that's different. So in going over the building with them, it is obvious that the building at one point in time was a grayish white, and somebody sandblasted it, albeit not perfectly, and it was somewhat to the same extent that this is, and it did have the brick that is below was originally brick. So in trying to think of, okay, the original view of it, that's where this kind of generated from. Where the 134 signage is here, and that color, it would match that color. So it is being repainted, to answer your question. But at the same time, you know, when I had a discussion with the owners, I said, you know, the current 134 that's on there now, it doesn't belong downtown. It's like some sort of modern lettering, and we want a building to look older, so we have that. And then we also had generated a version like that, because after looking in y'all's archives, I noticed that this actually at one point in time was black. Now that 134 was not quite like that, but there was a black tooth ridge at the very top. So we had generated a couple of versions, and it's like I said in the previous one, I'm open to suggestions that kind of dovetail with that intent, with making the front have a different face that frankly will help them market it as a building that hasn't had a series of or managed businesses on the first floor.
So then why are all the changes that you're suggesting to the second story that's successful and nothing on the bottom?
Yeah, I know. It's really good. It's the exact same question they asked me. And my response is because the original building was exactly like what you're looking at. It was a grayish white on top and it was brick on the bottom. And somebody sandblasted that section, and you can almost see it in this picture. They sandblasted it, and when they did, they left a lot of gray behind, and the whole building from the street side kind of looks maybe not as up to par as it should. And frankly, when you walk in on the first floor, you don't necessarily notice the first floor as much as you notice the second floor, because the second floor, unless you're on the sidewalk itself, but if you parked across the street and you turn around and look at that building, the wow factor is this balcony, and that's what gets your attention right away. So when you're looking at the building, it's really balcony and kind of what surrounds that. And it is a unique balcony for downtown, and frankly, it's beautiful. But how to make that come to life?
It seems to me like when you paint the top white like that, that it's accentuating the top and the bottom being separate from each other. If you look at the two columns that are brick on the ground floor, your eye, they carry right straight up architecturally in the building. It seems like that should be unified to me. What do you think?
You think it does, but it actually, there is a step there, and the bottom is actually out a little bit further than the top. And it's by the width of a brick, so that I put it in the right perspective.
Most recently, I mean, before this was the Stein Gallery, am I correct with that?
Right.
So, this was a heck of an improvement over the facade of that building, for 20 years. Like, cause it was all covered up
Right, metal.
with metal. And
The
when
old
they-
John B. Lee.
Yeah,
That's it.
and so,
Let me ask this. I mean,
which I think was the same, well, metal, but it was painted metal, as I recall.
gold.
Yeah.
the brickwork, the center door and the second floor,
Yes.
does that, I mean, I can't quite tell from the photos, but does it go up above the door?
The brickwork currently, let me get a little pencil so my fat finger doesn't get in the way, but currently, this brick is actually newer.
Right, exactly, right.
than the rest of this.
But up above, is there, I mean, you're asking for ideas here. Is there some way, and I hate to paint more brick, but, that's what I recall.
So this
if you
column
carried the
doesn't transition at all. I don't know if you can tell, but it doesn't transition at
not
all
quite.
to that column.
Not precisely, because they're different.
It's completely
They're
different.
different.
It steps differently. It looks differently.
Yeah.
Maybe if we unpaint
But
this.
I wonder if your
and
eye
just have
would
white
take it
on the other side.
visually
You know,
if
with,
they were
with,
the same.
with color, maybe even a different color, but creating a big,
Fan down, vertical.
vertical down the front, I don't know.
Yeah,
You've got the software to mock it up and see whether
Oh, yeah.
it would fly.
Probably the biggest challenge here is when you look at that, you can see the columns and it almost appears like it goes up. But when you look at this one,
Right.
you can see
It
that
doesn't make-
they're substantially different. So my column is only this wide here, and then up here, it's really from there all the way to there. Unless I kind of come up here and juke through the middle, I'm not sure. The problem is it lines up so diametrically different from one floor to another. I don't know how to transcend a color perfectly up without making lines in the color.
When you look at a city like New Orleans, for example, that has lots of brick buildings that are balconies, and then the brick is aged and the paint's chipping away, and so you see exposed brick between the paint, This has that flavor. My first thought looking at it was that it might be attractive if you left this sort of sandblasted brick effect just on the center, first and second, and unify the first and second story on the center column portion, and then go ahead and paint the sides.
So,
that would give
like,
them variation.
Basically right through here.
Yeah, so if you take that center detailed portion and then down below on the ground level, if you try to duplicate that sandblasted painted effect on that brick,
Right.
then it would all appear to be one, just in the middle. Then paint the rest of it, and you'd have a kind of a two-tone. It might unify and give the
Yeah.
building some unity.
I mean, the first floor definitely just disappears. I mean, you just, it looks like a dark hole, and it, to me, it always sort of has, you know, and,
Agreed.
Well, especially if there's cars parked all in the front there, too.
Yeah, and that, because it's got that outdoor seating area before there's a lot, it kind of gets lost in the grand scheme of things. But I wouldn't be opposed to that, except you're going to see a small column holding up what will look like a fat column.
Yes, it's true, they're not matched.
And to me, that kind of, in my mind, that looks
Sure.
like it should be the opposite.
Can we
What-
see the existing
but if you
building?
took that whole center, maybe it would look less column.
Column.
Yeah.
Well, can we, if you don't mind, if I can ask you two questions. First is, are you okay with changing the letters to the more
Oh, by all means.
time period?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good.
And are you okay with changing the big, huge awning to the small awning that fits with the other ones?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
Okay. So if we're only talking about,
And adding the two gooseneck lights.
Yes.
okay, so the thing that we could do, because we're painting it, is between now and the next meeting, leave it unpainted. And you guys take a look at it. And then at the next meeting, if we decide that we hate it, I'll come back to you and say, I hate it, I'd like you to paint that part white.
I really like what you did with the other picture around that little. with the
Yeah.
black one. To me, it's so much better.
Yeah, that's good.
More distinctive. I like that much.
Especially if it's brick below, I think it won't be.
And currently, can we see the picture of what it looks like now?
That same thing looks like that right now.
See, it seems to me, to tie it in, those center columns at the bottom need to be painted.
It looks like new and
Yeah.
old.
Yeah,
And it is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And the thing is, even if you, as simply as painting the entire top white as you're proposing, and the bottom columns white, bringing it down, you don't have to worry about it marrying up column to column.
So you'd only have the new brick right here.
And you only have the new brick.
You need to paint that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's several, I believe several of you are architects, right, that are up there? So, or to some extent, so, I mean, like I said, I mean, we all can have, and Alvaro in my firm is one, and I love all the input. I'm happy to try and incorporate whatever we can. The problem is always timing. And that's why my point was earlier, it'd be nice to be able to, okay, there's the intent, let, one person that you all prescribe, work collectively. Because the problem here is you don't meet for a month. That's really difficult for a developer to say, oh, go ahead and do this, but hang on before you do that. I implore you guys to think about that as time goes on. Because like I said, I've got two other buildings that you've seen many times, and they're both going to be in front of you next month.
It just seems with this one, if we could bring whatever you're doing up top down to the bottom.
Okay.
The stripe across the top that looks like it's yellow. Was that lettering? What was that? That different color?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
I believe it was the same sort of band that you see over here. It's actually a flattened brick area, and the actual grout in there is flush to the face of the brick, where the rest of the face is indented. I don't know, you can kind of see it right there. It's almost like they took the grout of the brick and they just went over it almost like a tile or a stucco surface, and then the rest of it is normal brick.
What if you painted that the gray color, like the bottom? It's on the gray, that light gray.
Yeah.
Or signage.
To make that stand out instead of all that white up there. Since it is different anyway. Would that?
I mean, it's one of the reasons why it almost cries out to be painted, because there is this variation, and it's that the way that right above that soldier, it's actually in between two soldier courses, I don't know if you can see it. There, you know, it's basically just a white grout
Mm-hmm.
of brick.
But it, I mean, it just seems that we need to bring something down.
Down to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's all brand new brick,
Yeah.
all of it. This is all the old original brick. And it just, not even the brick sizing is the same. And you all know what you got downtown, I'm just, you know, saying it's so hard to sometimes tie this all together.
But the reality is, the angle that we're seeing this at now, very few people would see it at that angle as well.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think this, that's actually me standing directly across the street. So, actually, this one was on the median, not across the street. The other one was, I'm standing in the median.
It just needs to
It
hide
needs
it.
to come down.
So if we go back to this thought process, are we saying then we want white here, or we want brick here?
Either.
Either one.
Can you
You know,
approve
if
either
you're
or?
gonna leave
So
it-
I can
Sure.
work on it
And we
with
can
the
prove it,
owner?
and it could be, you could paint it, but a different color.
Right. I hear you. I just want to, again, because
For you?
in this particular building, a little different than the other one, there, since we've applied, there is a tenant who is very close to getting in this building, so,
We
I don't
don't want to slow that
I
process.
don't have as much grace on this one as I did on the prior one.
Were you?
No, I was just gonna say, if you were gonna sandblast, go back to sandblasting the center, then this would need to be a sandblasted look at the bottom as well. Okay.
Which is a little bit more arduous, but yeah.
Yeah.
If there's budget, if they're looking to really do some improvement to the ground floor, a little bit of carpentry on that entrance, unify the width of the upper and lower, might be a big benefit.
We actually designed a little like craftsman cornice there.
Something like that.
And they didn't appreciate the cost of it, so, but I'll go back at
If you
it
did
again.
it in masonry, that would clearly cost, a lot.
Yeah,
But if, there might be other materials that could give it a little more heft at the base, because it is strange, but it's wide and blocky above and then narrow and narrow at the bottom.
Yeah.
You almost need to do something to give it more heft.
yeah.
If you want to talk afterward, I can connect you to somebody that could give you a plan for that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so there's no objections, and we'll do the motion as to the awning and the additional gooseneck and the changing of the 134. Now, because of the time factor that indicated, what I'm hearing is that we'd like to see by way of brick or paint to tie in the top with the bottom. I'm giving some latitude there. We've gone through several ideas, all of which will work, but he's got to get the approval from the owners.
Yes.
Are we somewhat on the same page? Jeff, do you have enough clarity?
So what you're saying is basically paint all this white and this white,
Or,
or paint the outsides white and leave the center brick.
brick, or some other means to tie in the upper with the lower.
Right, with some other color variation with it, that would be the same thing all the way down. I think it's gonna be whiter brick, but
Probably, yeah.
So then when you make that decision, you'll come back, is that the idea, and show us?
He wants to be able, he wants to go, he wants to
yeah,
do
I don't have that.
Time frame.
Unfortunately, on this one, I don't have a month's worth of time, but in a month, I better have this done.
Okay.
So I mean, it may be where we start with white and leave this brick and see how that looks, and then if he doesn't like it, then he finishes in with the color.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying, is that's what I'd actually be out there doing. I'd go ahead and paint it all, take a look at it and say, oh, does this work or doesn't it? And then if it doesn't, then do the opposite.
What if you applied the brick from the bottom on top of the brick?
Put new brick on the top.
I mean, to make it the same. If you put the
I
brick
think it
Yeah,
gets
that gets
expensive.
and made a column on top of that other brick,
So basically, make new,
make
this brick,
match that.
and put it up there.
The other brick, and then just paint the rest of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cost.
I think you've got the idea.
I know what you guys want, and frankly, if I can get brick laid that's cost effective, I would consider that, but I know what you want.
All right, so Jeff, are we clear enough for your purposes? All right. We have a motion. Do we need to restate, or we're clear as to what we're looking to approve? Patrice, you okay? Okay, if Patrice is good, we're good. Is there a motion? We have a motion from John, second from Moyer. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We look forward to working with you.
Appreciate it.
And we've got one more item, then we'll. And finally tonight, BAR 1853.
The City of Anderson is requesting approval to demolish the building at 600 South Main Street in the Downtown Historic District. The property is a vacant city office building and former funeral home. It's actually our former building where I started with the city years ago. The building is vacant and in generally poor shape. The roof is compromised in several places and has been leaking badly as a result. The city has tried to market the site for development, but has not found any interested developers. We have no concrete plans for the future use of the site. What we're proposing is to demolish the building, fill it in and grass it over at this point, pending future development on the property. There are no demolition standards in the downtown design guidelines. The demolition standards from the residential design guidelines may be used as a guide to inform your discussion of this request. But again, they're not specific guidelines for the demolition in the downtown district. They're just a guide for starting your conversation. So with that, happy to answer any questions that you have for staff.
Okay, yeah, sure.
What if they put the hotel there? Because it would be city property.
I think that is too far down the line for that change.
What was it before?
It was a funeral, the most recent use was planning and community development and the building department. We were in there 12 years ago. Essentially been vacant 12, 13 years now. Before that, at some point in the past, it was a funeral home.
So commercial always.
Right.
For quite some time.
For a long time.
For a long time. All right, we've done this before. Let's go through the checklist. Okay. First and foremost, whether or not the building contributes to the historical architecture of the neighborhood, or whether its removal would be a more positive and more appropriate visual effect. The structure is in very bad shape. I don't think it's contributing to the neighborhood. Does anyone? Would it not sort of improve? Again, this is downtown. This is not a residential district here. Making the way for further development?
Or opportunities.
Right.
A lot.
Yeah.
You can't demolish.
You know, and adding some new life to that end of town, even further, extending.
Tree. Does the tree stay? Or are we just cut down?
Probably for now.
Okay. Next, as to whether it's an uncommon design, uniqueness of architectural character, any concerns there?
It's been altered, it had vinyl siding on it, there's been an addition in the back, I believe, and so it's not the original structure as it was originally built on there.
Whether any historic events occurred in the building, I don't think there's any that have been known to be over the years. Next, relocation. There's a lot of criteria regarding relocation, the possibility of that. I think with the structural condition of the building that you've indicated, relocation is not a possibility. And again, the historic context and the structure is no longer intact with the additions and the vinyl. And would the demolition adversely affect the character of the neighborhood? To some extent, we're sort of cleaning it up, making the way for new here. And the economic and structural feasibility of rehabbing the structure.
I believe it would be cost prohibitive between the abatement and the cost of bringing it up to the current code. Like I said, we've tried to market it, and there's been zero interest from anybody in doing that, just because of the cost involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a balancing act. Yes, there's always cost involved in restoration, but as the guidelines indicated, we've gone through previously, if there's historic character, architectural character of the building, or something making it more significant, then you weigh that out. Here, from what I'm hearing, is that there's no architectural or historic character to this building to offset and justify the expense involved. And the remaining criteria are all regarding conservation by way of relocation. You know, we've gone through the criteria as to whether or not it would meet guidelines as far as the ability to approve the demolition. Any questions? Anything further to add? All right, is there a motion?
Is there a possibility, is there anything in there that a salvage person would, mantles, doors, things like that? Would that be a possibility?
That's certainly a possibility. I mean, we would be the ones doing the demolition. We'd be in charge of doing all that work to contract that out, so I'm sure we could, if there's any interest in it. I don't know what condition anything is in, whether it's in salvageable condition at this point, but we can certainly look into that.
Okay. With that, anything further? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion from Moyer, second. John, heard first. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Very good. That concludes the public hearing portion of our meeting. We have no addenda. Anything else to add before we go to the approval of last month's minutes? Patrice has provided those to us in advance. Any concerns, questions, corrections? Motion to approve from Mary Lou, second. Moyer, all in favor? Anything further? Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jill. Second by John. All in favor? We are adjourned.
Thank you.